Alrighty, this is take 2 of the Collagraph printing demo. You can see this plate has actually already been inked one time. That's why it's black, because we used this black paint that you were given. But I actually wasn't looking at the timing of when I was filming it, and then morning announcements came on, so it was really irritating to listen to that and me try to look over it. So I'm just going to refilm it. So I'm going to go over the supplies that you'll need. The first thing is obviously your plate. This plate needs to be totally sealed with the Mod Podge because we are applying the paint directly onto the plate. We don't want it to be absorbent. The Mod Podge helps it kind of be water repellent. It doesn't hold in any type of liquid. It makes it a little bit more like the ink sits on top so that the ink is able to be printed onto the plate better instead of absorbing and drying into the cardboard. So it needs to be sealed everywhere. So where we have these raised up edges, you want to put the Mod Podge on your brush and really push it into all those sealed edges. You want to also do it here on the edge of the plate and even on the back. You can see on the back it's still shiny. That's what the front looked like before I inked it for the first time. So that's what yours should look like. It should be shiny. The other thing that you'll need is obviously the paint that you were given at school. You'll need the paper that you were given at school. I tried to just kind of cut one generic size for everybody, but if you'd like to trace your plate on top of it and trim your paper smaller at home with scissors, that's obviously acceptable. If not, just try to place your plate in a good spot on the paper as you print. You're also going to need a spoon. You will see why, and that is it. Maybe a paper towel or a Q-tip as well. So I'm going to put my paper to the side so it stays clean while I'm inking my plate. Then I'm going to get the paint, and what you're doing here is just applying it pretty heavy to your plate. So we want to work fairly quickly here. You wouldn't want to start this and then go sit and watch TV and come back because the paint will dry. Even though we've made this surface non-porous by applying the Mod Podge, paint is still going to dry. That's just how the paint is made, especially because what we're using here is a water-based paint. It's going to take some time. So we can see where we've applied paint and where we haven't. You want to make sure that you are covering all the area on your plate pretty thoroughly, thinking too about making sure it's spread evenly. You don't want to have big clumps of paint, for lack of a better word, anywhere. You want to kind of spread it. I wouldn't say spread it thin. It should still be pretty thick, but you don't want any big globs left on there. You want it to be smoothed out evenly over the whole surface. So it will take a good bit. I tried to give you what I thought would be enough to print, this plate 3 times from home. You can kind of control where you want the paint to go and where you might want it to be thinner or where you may want to leave it out a little bit because we're applying it. You can use a brush, but you could also choose to use a sponge would work well. Anything that would apply the paint to the surface fairly evenly. Anywhere you may want to have a little extra paint, you kind of do have that control with the inking process. And you'll see that after you print the first plate, you may say, okay, well, I didn't love the way that part turned out when I printed it this time, so I'm going to try to ink it a little bit differently for the next print. That type of thing. You kind of have some control to see what it looks like and make decisions and move on. All right. So the next step, after we've got everything inked, again, we're wanting to move pretty quickly. If there are any areas that you know that you would like for those areas to remain light, you would use a Q-tip or a paper towel to lighten them, removing off some of that pigment from your plate. So just to show you, for example, I'm going to remove, you wanted to actually decide this ahead of time. I probably should have decided this ahead of time. I'm going to remove the inside square here just by wiping any paint off. You can see that it became a little bit lighter. The next step, you can do that in as many places as you want. I'm just going to do it in that one because I just want to see what this looks like without doing that. You may choose on your first print to not wipe any areas. You may just want to ink it all up, put the paper on and print it just to see what it's going to look like and then make decisions based on that. So you can see a little dry spot here, so I'm going to touch that up. And then I'm going to put my paper down on top of it, place it pretty carefully. And once it's down, leave it down. Don't pick it back up and try to replace it. Just once it's down, it needs to stay down. So I'm going to hold it still with one hand. And then this is where we're going to use the spoon. You want to hold it so that the spoon is smooth side down, like this. And then in a circular motion, you're going to start applying pressure to the back of the paper to print the plate. So making sure, I like to start at the top and move my way across so that I know I'm not missing any areas. You know, you don't want to just kind of rub it randomly, because then you don't really know, you don't know where you've already applied pressure. So you want to kind of do it in some sort of order so you know where you've applied pressure and where you haven't. So I'm moving down my plate as I go across and finish an area. You can see where impressions are being made on the back side of the paper, so that kind of helps see as well where we've pushed and where we haven't. Making sure I'm getting all my edges and my corners. And being careful not to apply so much pressure that you're gonna tear the plate. Tear the paper, excuse me. And just trying to apply pretty consistent pressure in all the areas of your plate. You should know your plate, know where everything is, and you should be able to say, okay, well, I know that this is where those square pieces are, so I'm gonna try to apply my pressure around those to really get all those lines I made. So same with your design. And you can turn it if you need to, but don't lose your place. You don't forget where you've applied pressure and where you haven't. So I'm sort of just touching up, getting back to any areas I feel like might need a second push here. And then the moment of truth, just like when we pull it off the press, we want to pull it off and see what this looks like. Neat. All right. Not bad. So you can see that where we had low areas in the plate, here between these raised pieces, these are my low areas, and that's what you're seeing printed here that's white. Same thing around the, obviously this is a reflection of this because it's printed this way. So this is where I wiped that in the middle. That's the low area here. The lower areas on the outside edges there. We can see these circles that I made out of glue printed. The polka dots, around them would be a low area, so that's why you see white. So this first print is kind of informative. You want to look at it and think, okay, well, how did it wipe? Or, how did the ink apply? Are there areas that I'd like to emphasize and make lighter? And then as you print the second time, make different choices. But this is roughly what you're going to get. And it should kind of be, like I said, a direct reflection of your plate because it was laying this way and I pulled it off this way. This is what we're seeing. So you need to print a total of 3. So this is my first one, and I would do this process 2 more times. We do not wash the plate off. Even though we've sealed it, it's not totally water resistant. Putting this under a faucet would be a bad move. It would probably damage your plate. So you can go ahead and directly apply the next layer of paint and make your next print. And it's okay to wait in between as well. You don't have to do it immediately. So you've got some flexibility there in your time. But again, just to recap the process, you ink the plate, you put the paper face down on the plate so the paper is facing you. Use the smooth side of a spoon to, in a circular motion, apply pressure to the plate so it's being transferred over to your paper, and then you pull it off and you do it 2 more times.